Sure.
How is America viewed? And you never see yourselves the way others see you. What is the perception of your observations of people's opinions of us and what's going on over here? There have been people in some other countries that say, hey, you guys better watch what you're doing over there, because can you not see what's happening to you? And maybe we can't see fully what's happening to us, but we certainly feel it. We feel that something is happening here that represents a really big change from what we've known. So my question is how are we perceived by the Swedes? How are we perceived by you?
Well, this is the unfortunate part, I think, because there is a lot of, as you might be aware of, John, there is a lot of America bashing around the world happening. A lot of, there's almost like there's this cultural, conflict in a sense going on. And it's always, when we invite Americans, to our program to talk, even some have some kind of, they almost feel like they need to, apologize or something like that. They're like, that they're American almost in a sense, which is very, very, it's very, strange for me to see that and to read that in one sense. It's almost like, obviously, just to clarify one thing, America is being used by the same forces that are, controlling the world. The global empire, call them whatever you want to call them, they're using America as it's the fist, if you will, of the New World Order. This is the tool that is the most obvious that they're using, the military force around the world. So people in that sense are so shallow that they think that it's, Americans' fault, which it isn't. I mean, in a certain extent, okay, yes, there is a responsibility in the sense that, the people allow a government to be in place and to do certain things. And partially, obviously, that is why we're seeing this, the Occupy movement. There's a lot of people, showing their dissatisfaction with the system that's growing up around them. I mean, what is it? I read the report back in 2010. I think more than 53% of U.S. tax payment, the money goes to the military. When you're at a time when this needs to go to things in your own country to help your own, people in that sense. We have, top secret assassination technology being developed for, 58 billion so far. As is, I was read the other day, the Center for Strategic and Budgetary Assessment. They began doing some reliable estimates. I think it was back in, 2010, this report, and they said that currently the total is $58 billion US, and this is kind of the, I don't know if the DARPA stuff is included in this, all this alternative kind of weird technology that they're developing as well. But in regard, it's a lot of money. So when people see this on the surface, I think from outside of America, they tend to think that this is the will of Americans also, which I believe it isn't primarily. I see them being used as other people being used. So here, unfortunately, in a country like this, it's also a tendency to kind of, compete almost with the systems. Again, it's the divide and conquer that we talked about in the beginning of the program, John, which is so important, where people end up identifying even with a nation that hasn't, cared for its people for hundreds of years. Yet people here in Sweden might kind of side with Sweden and say, yes, you are wicked and evil over there in America, weird stuff like that. I don't understand that discussion at all, because we have to go deeper underneath the surface in order to understand the geopolitical, how the geopolitical chessboard, if you will, is being played around the world, and why. And although you guys say no to your government, they go ahead and do things anyway. They don't turn around and ask you guys, hey, by the way, can we invade another country? They don't.
That's correct. They don't ask us.
Exactly, and they just do what they want to do. And this is what happened in...
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, this is what happened back in 2003, John. I mean, we had more people out, I think, around the world protesting than ever before, as far as I know, as far as I remember, in 2003 against the Iraq War. Yet all the forces behind it went ahead and do it. They're not listening to the people. There's another reason why they try to sway public opinion in a certain area. But in this case, the people, a majority anyway, which I think were not behind it, and hence it's also kind of interesting enough been a Well, it could be argued and debated if it's been a failed, mission in that sense. But the fact is that they've definitely been, left stranded there for a longer time than they initially wanted to, unless that actually is the plan to establish more military bases and all this. This can be argued. But even from an official point of view, it's been, going on for a lot longer than I actually wanted. So they just do stuff. They just do things without asking their people. And so hence we have to ask ourselves, are we truly responsible? To what degree can we rise up in a sense against our government and try to make them, enforce the will of the people? Because that's truly not what they're doing right now. And we're seeing this across the world, and it's really, really unfortunate, John.
Well, it's obvious that the government, they of the government and the hierarchy think that we are too stupid to make any sort of demands or make any sorts of decisions. We have it is a blatant and patent violation of the Constitution of the United States to commit military force into harm's way with force of arms without congressional approval. And it's happening over and over and over again. The big question on everybody's mind is, well, exactly what do we do about this? Do we get our torches and our pitchforks and march to the palace? That's not going to work. And really, as ham-handed and as, toddling as this Occupy Wall Street movement has been, I applaud them for getting out there and assembling for a redress of grievances. However, this is being made illegal because you can be arrested if the Secret Service is even on duty in an area where you're protesting, even if you're not aware that there is someone under their protection there. You can be arrested under federal law. And this NDAA thing, you don't have to be guilty of anything. All you have to be is accused. It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So we're becoming more and more helpless here. And if we let it go much farther, there will be very little we can do, if anything. And perhaps this would be a good time for us to just shift gears here. You mentioned the scientific dictatorship. Well, does this begin with surveillance and heat rays to keep the torches and the torch and pitchfork bearers away from the palace? What do you mean by a scientific dictatorship?
Well, in a sense, it's kind of what I've been talking about all along. It's many components involved in that. It's both behavioral, meaning it's like a psychological program running, and an economical and a social program running underneath to obviously control people in order to control the population. But on top of this, you have a infrastructure of technology being in place and also being built out all the time, which goes back to some of the things we addressed earlier, with artificial intelligence, these, supercomputers. The question of AI, for instance, has been one that I've been interested in for a long time. What is it? Is it the real thing? If so, if it's actually out there already or been created somewhere, how far advanced is it? Some people argue that it might actually be pretty advanced at this point already and is out there scouring the information networks to assess the situation as much as possible. In other words, collecting data mining, and this might even be possibly another ulterior motive to what Google and Facebook and these social networks are doing. They're definitely collecting data on the human species. There's so much data on there now on behavioral patterns, at least what they talk about, and opinions and things. And I personally think that this is being sold to the Axiom corporations of the world. Is being processed, possibly being put in as variables into some kind of supercomputer that's going to assess the situation. And the more predictable human beings are, we're back to this point again of why they wanted, kind of diminish the bandwidth, the ratio of the different expressions, individualities, personalities that people have. The fewer those are, the more predictable as a species we become. People might even be on pills in one sense, so they're completely numbed off in one sense, which also makes them predictable. So all of these things might be, put into a system in order to assess the situation of what they are going to do next in order to completely take things over. And again, I'm not trying to, fear-monger or anything like that. There's a lot of people who say that this is, like an earlier comment that you mentioned, John, that this is about instilling fear and everything like that. But this, in all fairness, that's not what it is. We have to look and focus on the dark side or focus, but we need to at least recognize it. We need to understand what it is in order to combat it. If we stick our heads in the sand because it's just too upsetting and too scary, then we're going to lose the plot. We have
well,
to.
if you see a dark sail out on the horizon, chances are you're not fear-mongering if you say, I see a dark sail out there on the horizon and it's headed this way. That's not fear-mongering. That's just a slightly heightened state of awareness, wouldn't you think?
Absolutely, exactly, and that's what this is all about. Pattern recognition. You're studying and assessing, as we have to do the situation, and when you put, one and one together, you can see that that's probably going to turn out to be two right there. So that's just what you see. So you present it, you talk about it to raise your concerns, to spread the information within the human network in that sense, so that people can understand these things, and if they end up in a situation where they will have an impact depending on the choices they make. They can see that whatever choice they make now is going to have an impact in some way, like a domino effect throughout the world. And I think the larger we can see that the spanning, in a sense, across the globe, the better it is, that we can properly understand that, whatever choice I'm doing right now, that is going to either aid this, or it's not going to aid this. And as we'll be making a better assessment of the situation. I think really in terms of solution-wise, we talk about that's one of the primary things we need to do. Not only talk about this stuff and get the information out, but also spread that awareness level of things. If we truly understood what when we buy something, let's say in the store, what company we bought that from, I think we would maybe be prone to not buy it. We would understand, wait a minute, this is supporting, the wrong ideas that I'm behind. I don't, support the philosophy either of the company or even the people behind this corporation. I think that's why people need to go back almost to a local think again, see what is happening in the community, in a sense, and what is needed there, what is necessary there, and support the people that you do know that are closer to you. In that sense, that's back to, one of the American ideals there about the mom and pop kind of business and stuff, which unfortunately is obviously diminishing over there, and it's been diminishing here forever. There's hardly anything such left. It's monopolies, and that's why again it's so dangerous. So if we just focus on the solution bit, I think the most important thing we can do is have awakened, intelligent, rational, aware, but also kind of sensitive people who actually have a touch with their intuitive abilities, that actually can, understand things and feel things. Like, something's off here, something's not right. I'm not going to support this, or I'm not going to do that. And I think a lot of the problems, in a sense, we're faced with, would not automatically disappear, but at least a lot of weight in that sense of our shoulders would be lifted if we just knew that we were doing the right things. It's one of my one of the most simple things I think we can do. So you could support a local economy instead of the gigantic monopolies that are out there. It's very basic in a sense, but it's almost like we're thinking too much on it in some cases. We're making it too big and too troublesome, and that's kind of maybe the dangerous part. We feel defeatist. It's like, there's nothing I can do anyway, so I'm just going to carry on as I'm doing. That's not the way.
Well, and then the more they are able to divide us, the less we believe that we are on the same page with anybody else. In fact, as we approach our break for the top of the hour, we got a lot of stuff to cover in the last hour here, Henrik, so be ready, because I'm going to ask a bunch of questions, and you have large thoughts, so condense them as best you can, because the audience will then do their own research on those things that they're interested in, and we'll go forward. But back in the hippie days, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, somebody put a poster up that said, what if they had a war and nobody came? I wonder what would happen if all of a sudden it's like, we don't feel like funding your wars anymore, and when April 15th got here, nobody went